This I gotta look into. Sagittarius is, the planet is Jupiter.
The planet is Jupiter, and who's Jupiter in mythology?
You're good at this part.
Yeah, I know, but
Zeus. Yes, Jupiter is Zeus in mythology, and Zeus is the god.
yeah.
So they have this air about them that they know everything, that they are wise beyond their years, they're attracted to religion, they're attracted to philosophy, higher education, world-class travel. So they're very much, because it's Zeus. Zeus is the god, the king of the gods. So when you understand the story of the different gods, then you understand why that sign is the way they are. What's Pluto, the god of what?
Hades, that's
He's Hades, he's a god of the underworld. So he likes to be alone. He was very miserable in relationships. He raped Persephone. So there's a sexual innuendo there. That's the idea of, unless you sort of have a relationship with me that's legit, then I X you out. That's why the Scorpios have that loyalty issue. So once we understand the different stories, the different myths, and we'll go through each one each week, then you really start to understand why the person with the sign has that characteristic. Because they take on that god. They take on the, sort of the qualities of that god. What do they rule?
Hips and sexuality.
The hips. The hips are a sexual organ. The hips have to do with flexibility. It may be that they're not sexually open, and they might have trouble with the hips. So for instance, I have a Sagittarius ascendant. The ascendant rules what house? You remember? We'll do the houses in a minute, but
I think I left
what's the, say that again?
the ascendant is what house? 1 through 12. Is that 12? The ascendant is the first house, and it's the physical body.
Body and personality.
So I have a Sagittarius ascendant. That means that my hips could be at risk. I can have a hip fracture, I might not be open enough in my hips, or I might be very flexible in my hips, depending on what's happening in the chart. But when you know what's at the first house, when you know what's at that physical sign, that body part is also going to be affected. I used to be like this rail. I was like a box. And all of a sudden, after I had children, I just got these wide hips. They came out of nowhere. Because Pluto had just crossed my ascendant and changed my whole body. So there's a reason why things are happening to people. What's this? Capricorn. What's Capricorn? Miss Capricorn.
We're open. We're too open sometimes. At least me.
No.
I don't know. I'm weird because.
No, you're not weird. The thing is, you have an entire chart.
Yeah.
So we have, all of these signs, all of these planets, all of these aspects that we're going to talk about. That's what makes you the type of Capricorn you are. But the essence of Capricorn is actually quite quiet. They're fearful. They're melancholic. They tend to lean towards depression. They're very, very, very much about professional success.
Mm-hmm.
You are not going to see a Capricorn that has not been successful. We're just reviewing. We haven't started. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's going to be a tendency towards professional success. Is that how?
That is my son up and
Okay.
down.
Okay. And what does it rule?
Bones.
The bones. Yes, all of the structure of the body. The people that live the longest are Capricorns. They rule old age, and he's ruled by Saturn. Capricorns are ruled by Saturn, and Saturn is, in Spanish, what we call it viejo niño, the old
Child.
child. So they tend to grow up being very serious and get younger and lighter as they get older.
Oh, good, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. So my nephew is like that. Yeah. And
Very serious.
so it's like they grow up, you know, like this fussy old guy, and then as they grow up, they get lighter, kind of like Benjamin Button type of thing, that they get younger as they get older. Okay? Aquarius.
Uranus. That's
Ruled
the
by
planet.
Uranus, and what's the personality?
Very stubborn. Wasn't it?
They are stubborn because they like to do things their way,
Yeah.
but not stubborn in a Capricorn way.
No.
Capricorn is very stubborn because of the way they like the rigidity. Uranus or Aquarius people, they like to do things by the beat of their own drum. They're very, Alex?
My Alex.
Okay, so they're very rational.
Aquarius.
They're very much about themselves. They are the rebel of the zodiac. So wherever you have Uranus or wherever you have Aquarius, that is where you're going to rebel against the norms. So that's why he's so like, no, no,
And he is not bad about it, he's just like, yeah, I'll do it.
no, and then doesn't.
He doesn't. Yeah, okay, I'll do it. No, he doesn't. And then when the third time I'm yelling, why are you yelling? I'm doing it.
And what body part do they rule?
Nervous system and bloodstream.
Yes, the nervous system. Anytime you have anybody that has to do with something with the circulatory, it's actually the circulatory system. Nervous system is actually more Mercury.
Okay.
The circulatory system, anything to do with the blood, it's a Uranus issue. And it's usually an issue of control or rebellion. So you have that archetype really strong. We've talked about the rebellious archetype. So that's what you were talking about. Capricorns, you're really talking more about your Aquarius nature. So we have to see where you have Aquarius and where you have Uranus.
Is that why it's hard to like get a vein in me?
It could be.
Yeah.
It could be. If it's
I look
afflicted,
like a pincushion when I come out the hospital.
it could
They're
be.
trying to
If
say-
Uranus or Aquarius is afflicted negatively, we'll talk about that today, it could affect why that's difficult, okay? And Pisces, the worst sign
The
in the
ones
whole
that get-
zodiac.
Oh my God. Are they
Uh,
lovers or something? Or
No,
We're
they
so
get
full
told?
of shit.
Yeah, they get
Pisces, we are the worst. I love being a Pisces, but I hate being a Pisces. We're the most misunderstood sign.
Mhm.
And it has to do with Neptune. Neptune, he was thrown to the bottom of the ocean, abandoned by his mother, because he was hideous looking. So there's a lot of abandonment issues, and in the myth of Pisces, this is the sign of Starbucks, ironically. But there's two fish connected to a string. And in the myth, mother and child were running, they were being chased. One stayed on Earth and the other went into the cosmos. So the essence of a Pisces is to feel so alone and so misunderstood. It took me years to really know what he meant by this, but my first astrology teacher, he was like, Pisces people have a void in them that will never get filled. And it's so true. It's like you have this hole in you. Because going back to Neptune being abandoned and discarded, and going back to a big part of the Pisces personality, missing a big part of them. That's why they're the most mystical spiritual sign. They don't live on this earth. Pisces aren't from this earth. We tend to be from the higher levels of consciousness and the cosmos, that we don't like this earth. This earth is like a nuisance to us. So the first time I got cancer, I really realized how much I had to embrace my body. Because I always felt my body was like the enemy. I used to go like this. I hated my body. Like I didn't understand how much hatred there was towards the material. So going back to balancing spirit and matter, Pisces are not balanced in spirit and matter. They're all about spirit. So they need more earth. They need like Taurus. They need the material, they need the body, and illness is oftentimes one way that Pisces get afflicted because it forces you back into the body. It's the most schizophrenic personality, suicidal personality, dissociated personality. It's really tough being a Pisces. Unless you have a lot of strong things in your chart, it's very difficult. So,
You guys get stepped on, right?
yeah, we're the doormat of the zodiac. And I always tell my daughter, because my daughter on the cusp of her 5th house, these lines are called cusps, and they have a meaning. We're going to go through the houses now as a review. But these lines will tell you what sign you have in that sector. And my daughter has Pisces in her child house. So she's like, Mom, what if I'm a Pisces? I said, well, luckily you have me to help you raise the children. But I always say I'm going to start an organization called Pisces and Parents of Pisces just to like explain, like, because we are misunderstood folks. And so those are the personalities. And what does Pisces rule? What body part?
Feet.
The
right?
feet.
The feet.
Okay, so we're the doormat of the zodiac, and we are so not in our feet, we are so not in our body that we're supposed to be in our body. Okay, so that's the review of the signs, the elements, and the planets. Now let's review the houses. What's the first house?
Body, personality.
Body and personality. The second,
Possession, values.
possessions and values, very good. All of this should roll off your tongue. The third house,
Siblings, communicate.
siblings, the way we communicate, yes. And it's also our lower education. It's also our K through 12.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is K through 12, and the 9th house is university and beyond. The 4th house,
Family, home, lifespan.
family, home, and lifespan. And what I told you about the 4th house, each house is like a pie. It's the life cycle. This is the only house where from the beginning to the end tells you your whole trajectory of your life. So if you have a planet here, this tells me about your early years. This tells me about your middle years, and this tells me about your older years. So I can see the person's entire trajectory of their life and what's going to happen or what they experienced based on what planets and what signs are at what part of that house. That's the entire life cycle. It's from life to death. So last week, I don't remember who it was, someone had Mars touching the cusp of their 4th. I said, oh, this person had to have a very vicious, aggressive, maybe violent childhood because it's the first planet. I've read charts for people and I'll be like, oh, what happened to you at 15? Because I can see at 15 degrees that something happened and I had a planet, and I'll tell them, you know, did something of this caliber happen? And they'll be like, yeah, how did you know? And then I explain to them. So all the things that we've gone through are in the chart. There's nothing accidental. It's all written in this. It's phenomenal. The 5th house, entrepreneurship, so it's your business, the type of business that you would be good at opening by yourself.
Children and self-love.
Children and self-love, love in general. It's the way that you should be giving love to the world. 6th house,
Animals, work, health.
animals, work, and health, absolutely. So people that have bad 6th houses or planets in the 6th that are difficult can have a lot of illnesses. You can see cancer in there, you can see blood disorders, you can see if they should get, it's also medicine, whether the person should go to a regular doctor or go to an alternative doctor, if they're going to get healed by energy work, if they're going to get healed by traditional medicine, you can see all of that in the 6th house. 7th,
Marriage, close friends.
marriage and close friends. The 2nd marriage house is the 11th. So in astrology, the first marriage house has to do with the one that gave you children, even if you were never physically married. If you had a baby, that's the 7th house partner. If you never had a child and you've been married 2, 3, 4, 5 times, it does not matter. You will continue going to the 7th house. But if you've already had a child, every other relationship after that is seen in the 11th house. Okay? So when people come, and that's a very popular question, am I going to meet someone? Will I get married? What signs are good to marry? You always look at the 7th and you look at the 11th. And the 5th house is love. So it's a good sign for love, not necessarily marriage. The 8th,
Sex, taxes, other people's money.
yes, sex and taxes and death. The house of death. Why do you think next to every funeral home there's a little hotel?
Really?
Death and sex are always together, yes. When someone dies, psychologically, someone feels a loss, and people go and have sex. There's like a joke that when people get older, they go to funeral homes to find their next husband. It's a joke, but it's not a joke. When someone dies, physiologically, we have a need to procreate. True?
Yeah.
Our doctor in the room? So, death and sex are found in the same house. And death is not only physical death of what you will die from, which you can see, but also metaphysical death. I didn't die from breast cancer, and I have cancer in my 8th house. But I did die metaphysically. I died metaphorically twice every time I got breast cancer. So it's not only the physical death, it's also our metaphorical deaths. 9th house,
Studying, travel, and
the best house in my opinion. I think you're a 9th house sun, right? She's a Gemini with a 9th house sun. Amazing.
yeah.
Wow. So much.
You are too? Okay. My favorite house. Long distance travel, philosophy, religion, everything to do with expansion of the mind, higher consciousness, university. It's amazing. I love Sagittarius and I love the 9th house. I always say I want to come back as a 9th house Sag in my next one. The 10th house,
profession.
the 10th house is profession and it's your mother. So our double Capricorn over here, Miss Paula, is a Capricorn with a 10th house sun. Is she going to have mommy issues? Just a little bit. But she's going to be extremely successful professionally because she's a Capricorn plus she's a 10th house sun. Wherever your sun is, whatever house your sun is the most important house of your chart. Okay, that's where you're going to shine.
Exactly.
That's the scenario in which you're supposed to evolve your life. Okay? The 11th house,
Clubs, social groups, and charity.
yes, social groups, especially social justice. That's the charity I'm talking about. Anything to do with social justice. So if you're very into politics, you might have a very heavy 11th house. If you're very much into charitable giving or volunteering, your 11th house might be packed. I have a friend who has Pluto in the 11th. And when I first read her chart, I go, you are always going to be surrounded with very, very wealthy people. The groups that she surrounds herself with, Pluto being wealth. Pluto is also wealth, besides death and sexuality and all that. And she's worked for famous people her whole life. She's always been surrounded with wealthy people. And the 12th house?
Karma, past lives, secrets.
Secrets, karma, past lives. Also karmic illnesses. Whatever happens in one house, there's the opposite house. The 6th house is the health house and the illnesses. The 12th house is the karmic illnesses. The 3rd house is lower education. The 9th house opposite is higher education. So everything in astrology is in pairs. Okay? So when we see these are called axes. The 1-7 axis means something. The 2-8 axis, the 3-9 axis. When you see a lot of concentrated planets in someone's chart, in an axis, that axis is super, super important. That theme is going to be a major theme in their life. Like I have a lot in the 410. So my children and my profession are always going to be very important. And for most of my life, I've worked from home so I could be at home with my kids. So I found a way to get the axes to work together. So wherever the planets are clustered, in whatever axis, whatever house, that's going to be a very important placement for the person. And that you can see visually. You don't have to know any astrology to learn that. You look at the chart and you see where your eye takes you, and where you've got the cluster of your planets, that's going to be a very, very important sector. Okay, so those are the houses. Every sign rules one of the houses. First house, second house, third house, fourth house, fifth house, sixth house, seventh house, eighth house, 9, 10, 11, and 12. In that order. So, the first house is going to be how the person enters into life. It's the head. It's like the head of the zodiac. But what they're going to do is that they're going to enter their life in the sign that's on the cusp. That's what's going to determine people's personality. So for instance, I said earlier, I had Sagittarius on the cusp of my first. So I'm going to enter my life in a very Sagittarius way. And Sagittarius is freedom. I had no anesthesia when I was born. My mother went to the doctor said, hold it. My mother said, hold it, your mother, and I came flying out. So I entered the world in a Sagittarius way. Your first house cusp is going to tell about your birth. How you were born in the world and how you're going to move into new cycles of your life. The second house cusp is going to tell you about how you hold on to your possessions and your money. I have Aquarius on there. Spend, give it away, no interest in anything, especially being a Pisces, material, what does that matter? So the lines, these cusps, are going to tell you the meaning of the house, but how that particular person is going to live out that way of their life, how they're going to live out their health, how they're going to live out their sexuality, how they're going to live out their karmas, how they're going to live out their marriage. So these lines are super, super, super important. They're called cusps. A lot of times they're not given much importance, but they are one of the most important things in the chart. So the meaning of the house for every single person is the same. But the sign on the cusp gives you the flavor of how that person is going to live it out. So it's super, super important. Okay? Now you have Capricorn on your 10th.
Yeah.
So do you have an Aries ascendant?
Well,
The first house, is it Aries?
in the first house, it's Saturn, I think.
No, sign-wise.
Oh.
Yeah, you see the arrow is in Aries. That's Aries.
What is the first signs? This is Venus? No.
This is Aries.
Aries, okay.
So Paula, the reason I know is that she's a 10th house Capricorn. So she's in order. Her first house is Aries, her second is Taurus, her third is Gemini, her fourth is Cancer. Very rarely are people like that. She happens to be in order of the signs, but most people aren't like that. So that first sign that's called your ascendant, that's going to tell you the rest of the chart of everything else. So I'm Sagittarius, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini. It's like a shifting wheel. So when you know that ascendant, you kind of know all the others. So the meaning of the houses stay the same, but the way that the person's going to live out that sector is going to be determined on what sign is on the cusp. And we'll get more into that. That's just a generalization so you understand. So the most important things in astrology: signs, planets, houses, elements. This is just a review. Now I'm going to give you the new stuff. Okay? Today we're going to do something called the crosses. There's 3 crosses. Anyone ever see the Passion of the Christ?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what is happening when Jesus is crucified? Who's he crucified with?
Oh,
Where's the
the
thief?
robber.
With the 2 thieves.
Yeah.
3 crosses on the hill. I forget the name of the mountain.
Okay.
Jesus, robber number 1, robber number 2. Jesus was an astrologer, my friends. Jesus was followed by a star. The 3 wise men followed him. He was an astrologer. His birth was announced by the cosmos. And he was not a Capricorn. He was a Leo. He was born in the summer. He was not born in winter. Just FYI.
He died at 33 then?
And he died at 33.
Oh.
Yes.
Just wanted
But
to-
he wasn't a Capricorn. So we celebrate December 25th because it was a pagan holiday called the Bacchanalia, where they had these huge parties and orgies. And the Christians came in and said, okay, we want to make all these pagans, because we were all pagans pre-Christianity, we want to make all these pagans Christians now. But we can't have them celebrate Christ in August when their party season is in December. So let's just take all of the pagan holidays and slap on the face of a Christian holiday. So really what we're celebrating in Christmas are orgies, parties, that's why we eat, that's why we pig out, that's why we're like literally having these orgies, we're having these bacchanalias. But the other thing is that we're celebrating the end of harvest. That's why the Christmas season starts with Thanksgiving. Okay? So all of that was pagan religion. Most of what we celebrate is pagan. It's not Christian. The Christians just utilized it. So they took this idea of Christ and the 3 crosses from astrology. And there's 3 main crosses. The first one is called the cardinal. The second is called the fixed. And the third is called the mutable. This is the most important thing in astrology, in my opinion. If you understand the crosses, you understand astrology like this. I don't need to see a chart. But if I know the crosses, I can see everything that's on the person's chart, and I just know it. So this is super, super important. Most people have planets on all 3 crosses. Okay, so all of these planets, most people will have them on all 3 crosses. Today we're going to look and see which cross you have the most of. The one that you have the most of will determine more of your personality. Okay? Last week what we did was the elements determining our personality. If you have a lot of water, if you have a lot of air, if you have a lot of earth, if you have a lot of fire. So we had somebody here, I don't remember who it was, that had a lot of earth and a lot of water. What personality is going to be someone that has a lot of earth and a lot of water?
I got 5 earth and 5 water.
Okay, it's going to be very muddy. So what element does she need to get her going?
Fire.
Fire. She needs un impulso, un cohete in her butt. So hanging around with fire people, being in a fire profession, that's going to help someone that's very sluggish and muddy like her. And a few weeks ago, she was only wearing black and white. And now she wears pink, and she wears red, and she wears orange. She's wearing more fiery colors. Because she had been told at a very young age to only dress in black and white and gray. How muddy is that? She needed oomph. So the elements tell us about the personality. The crosses will also tell us an additional step about the personality. Okay? Cardinal people, people that have most of the planets on the cardinal cross, they're going to be very giving and they're going to be very taking. There's going to be more of a balance in how they expend their energy. They're going to give, they're going to take. Come on in. And I'm going to tell you the signs in a minute and we'll calculate it. The fixed cross. People that are on the fixed cross tend to be hoarders. These signs are the hoarding signs. Guess what sign is on the fixed cross?